Hey there, James. Well, yeah, it's been great to get to know you and your work through watching Next in Fashion. Yeah, thanks very much for having a chat with us today.
Yeah, thanks for
And
having me.
before we get onto the show itself, I just wanted you mentioned on the show that you'd worked with your dad for a few years, and I just wondered what the draw of fashion was for you, and then maybe how that background in engineering kind of comes into your design work now.
Yeah, so the draw to fashion was it was there since I was a little kid. Like I vintage shopped a lot with my mom as well. And sort of I developed like a taste or sort of a pretty good eye for good fabrics and different sort of things like that since I was little. Um, but I never really thought a fashion career was a thing. Like I didn't know that it was a thing that real people did. That was not, in my like world whatsoever. So I never thought about it. It never crossed my mind until I was much older. So while I had sort of like a knack for it and I just had sort of an interest in it based on like purely need, needing to find stuff that worked for me, um, that as a job never crossed my mind. But construction did. So what I really wanted was I knew I wanted to own my own business. At some point, I watched my dad own his own business, and I thought that looks like that's something for me. Because I'm pretty like I'm not a very like promotable guy. You know what I mean? Like you can't promote this guy. Like my career was like a commercial career in fashion for me was like not anything like super spectacular. Although I had a little success, it wasn't remarkable by any means. I knew that I sort of needed to be on my own, do things my way. They were always a little bit different. They're always a little bit weirder. They're always just kind of sort of like, yeah, it's like, hey, we don't really do things that way, but it's like, man, I just really think it's going to work this way. Um, and so sort of destined to work for myself. And I think the engineering aspect of it, uh, I mean, it's the exact same toolkit. Instead of working with raw materials that are like concrete and steel and rebar, the raw materials are just different. They just have different properties. They're like a really stiff heavyweight upholstery fabric, which I love to use, or different things like that. You need certain stitches to achieve certain things and give it stiffness or not give it stiffness and different things like that. So really it's just a basic understanding of material properties, and it's project management. It's taking something that exists only on a paper sketch and you need to make it into the real world. And you use materials to accomplish that in drawing and sketches and a really strong imagination. I think I've got a really strong imagination sort of intact from childhood, and that helps a lot in what I do now.
Yeah, well, I think we really saw a lot of that work in the show, the construction and the imagination. And the suit is kind of at the center of what you do as a designer, isn't it? And I think for a lot of people, I mean, I know from my own experience that the idea of getting a suit can be a little bit intimidating, maybe especially the first one. And I know that you kind of design with queer folks kind of in mind too, don't you, as far as the suit?
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's exactly right.
What's kind
Um,
of yeah, I suppose the draw of that, and why is it important for you to, yeah, I guess keep queer, trans, and gender non-conforming folks in mind as you work or fit people? Yeah.
yeah. So, I mean, we talked a little bit about this, but I started in fashion, in suiting because I had just had so many life milestones just absolutely ruined by clothing. So like I look back on photos of myself from 20 age about 25 and earlier, and it, to me they're just useless. They just that's not it's those are all things that happen that I wish didn't happen. I wish my high school graduation didn't happen. I wish my college graduation didn't happen, family weddings, everything like that, because it's just so humiliating. So that is why I got into this. So at the center of what I do is mostly make formal wear with dignity for people who otherwise didn't know there was an option, didn't know they could feel it, didn't know that it had to feel that bad. You know what I mean? It just feels that bad. It's like, it doesn't have to feel that bad. You can actually feel really great at a family wedding or at a graduation and things like that. So that is certainly the center of what I do. And I think that like what I did on the show, like I didn't even really know I was capable of as a designer. It really pushed me into a trajectory that I was like, oh, I like doing a lot of other stuff other than suits. And when I had the freedom, so Tan and Gigi really like suspended real life from us, right? They sort of held back like bills and you got to walk the dog, you know, do all these things. And we could just show up to this playground and start creating. And I didn't go to fashion school. So I treat that, to me, that was fashion school. And it was during the show that I learned, I would say, really what my aesthetic could be outside of suiting. So like, I didn't see any of that coming, you know what I mean? I was like, oh, cool. This is really what I sort of the world that I want to live in. So it was really fantastic. Yeah.
And what was it like working under the time constraints? Because that's one thing that's like a little bit stressful. I mean, exciting, but stressful to watch as a viewer as well. Because, you know, Tan and Gigi seem to be constantly coming in and saying like, you've got 4 hours, you've got 2 hours.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, oh, you have to take everything you need for the runway. And, you know, everyone's like not quite finished yet.
Yeah. I really struggled with the time because I didn't have a good understanding of my own pacing yet, but you learn really quickly. So I didn't have a good understanding of like, oh, I'm okay, I need to just do these few things. But like, I had no sense of like how long this might take, how long that might take. What am I biting off more than I can chew here? Because I was just going for it every time. I was like, well, let's see what we got, you know? So the time constraints were certainly like stressful, to say the least. And you try to, you don't have a guide for timing either, because everyone is working on their own things and they all have different skills and abilities. And so you have no sense of like, okay, well, their top is done, so maybe my top should be done. Like, it's apples to oranges the whole time. So you really just have to stay focused on what you're doing, what your pieces are that you're creating. And when it gets down to it, I don't know. I always just found that like sixth gear where I was like, just so faster, like, or figure out a way. Or a lot of times what I would do is I'd get right up to the end of the time and, you know, start figuring out other ways that I didn't expect to like close garments, close seams, close waistbands, different things. So you figure it out, you know. And a lot of actually good design choices came from that too, I will say. I like a parameter. I like sort of being hemmed in and saying like, all right, you got these things to work with, whether it's time, money, different types of materials, like see how crazy you can get from there. I work well with parameters, so you learn to love it.
And what kind of look were you, or which look were you kind of proudest of? Either maybe for some of those reasons, or just like the end result, or you know, which one was most sort of satisfying?
Yeah, the most satisfying one. Gosh, the thing I'm most proud of is point blank. I would wear everything that I created, and that was sort of my litmus test. Like, if you couldn't see me in it, knowing my personal style now, then like, it didn't come from a very truthful place. And I'm proud to say, like, I really enjoyed and would wear like almost everything that I put up there. So I think one of the things I'm most proud of is I really liked the jacket from the first episode. That quilted fabric, I still like dream about. I've like got asks into fabric mills all over the place. I'm like, can we get more of that? Can we get more of that? Like, I can't stop thinking about that fabric. It was like a cream quilted fabric with printed, like crests or like family shields on it. And it was really cool. I really liked it. And one of my other favorite looks. Yeah, the big collar was very silly. It sort of needed to add some like regalness to it, right? Like it needed some sort of like royal stature to it.
Yeah.
So that was a last minute save. And that was not in the original plan, but it worked out. And one thing I really liked too was the quilted set I made from the vintage competition. Yes. I actually repaired a lot of tears or stains on that set with pieces from the scrap quilt, and I tried to match it up so you totally blended it in. And I thought that was pretty cool. That was like, if you're gonna be sustainable, that's probably the actual very best way to do it, is to not
Yeah.
buy anything.
Yes. Yeah, no, I love that look too.
Yeah.
And going back to the first week, so the theme is royalty,
Mhm.
and you're talking about the beautiful jacket that you created with the pink collar, and your inspiration for that was kind of pop royalty, and specifically Harry Styles, wasn't it? Is he someone, why are you drawn to, like, I suppose the way that what he wears, and is he someone that you would like to design for, and any particular occasion in mind, maybe?
I would love to design for Harry Styles. I think that's probably on my top list, really. Megan Rapinoe, Harry Styles, those are sort of like two people I would love to dress one day. Harry Styles I loved his suit era. It was very like Mick Jagger-esque. He's got a really playful approach. And I think that's very evident. And I also have a very playful approach. So I don't think either one of us are taking ourselves like too seriously in the fashion space. Like I think truly at the end of the day, like this should be fun. Like we are getting dressed. Like it's child's play, and like when you can finally have a lot of fun with it, like that's what I want everyone to experience. Is I know how painful it was to get dressed for a long, long time. And now I'm on the other side of it and I know just how much fun it is. And so I think that I try to like make sure that I'm still having fun getting dressed all the time and designing. And so Harry Styles does the same thing, I think. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that guy's not taking himself too seriously at any time in any clothing. So he's really free. He's a very free dresser, I would say.
And also seeing people dress freely, I think makes us, just as the people consuming it, feel a little more free, even though our choices, might not be, maybe quite as extravagant, but we're like, oh, maybe I will wear, silver sneakers or something, and that'll be my
Yeah.
touch. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a phrase I like to use, which is like gender equal dressing, I think is really important. I've never felt that like gender neutral was a term I really like resonated with. Like if we all neutralized to gender, then that would be a big disservice to me, because then my tools of dressing in a masculine way are then taken away from me, and that they're very helpful tools, and those tools are very helpful for a lot of people. So like I want people to dress gender equal, so like equal access to masculine silhouettes and equal access to feminine silhouettes, regardless of who you are, right? So I think like Harry Styles also does that very effectively. And, if I can do it, if I can dress in a masculine way and inspire people to have fun in their clothing and not be afraid of it anymore, like that's the whole goal for me. It's to sort of show people that like it can be done, you can have fun and have equal access to whatever you want to wear and not be so afraid of clothes anymore.
And you had a fan of that first look in Donatella Versace, didn't you? Who, she says to you, "Oh, when I saw it come down the runway, I said, I love it, I love it, I love it." Which, what was
Can
it
you
like
believe
kind of
that?
interacting with her and getting that kind of feedback?
I mean, I was honestly speechless. A year ago, I was just sort of a very, very, I would say, below average worker, sitting in an office, doing sort of normal office fashion work. And then Donatella Versace says, "I love it" 3 times to my face. You don't, there's no way to prepare for a moment like that. You just try to show all of the gratitude that you're experiencing. You try to just reflect that back to that person and let them know how much that means to you. And I think she meant it. I hope she wasn't like pranking me by any means. It didn't seem sarcastic, so I tried to like took it to heart. It was remarkable. It's hard to describe what that's like, but I think like my big takeaway from that is like you're far more capable. I'm far more capable than I ever thought I was, and just all these crazy ideas that I have. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of cool. Maybe I'll do this. It's like, no, definitely do that. People are going to respond to it. And it's sort of satisfying to get a creative idea out and have someone say, I get that. I get it. And I like it, and do more of it. And you're like, okay, you got it.
And you touched on this a little bit in some of your other answers, but when it came to the childhood theme that week. It seemed like, Tan and Gigi were being very sensitive and realizing that they knew it was particularly a difficult challenge for you. And I don't know, could you give us a bit more of an insight into what it was like to sort of navigate that, and I guess the work that ultimately came out of it too?
Yeah, the work that ultimately came out of it, I liked. Again, I think that, for an Easter morning when you need to get dressed for a family event, like that thing that I made, I could have used. It was like I could have used something like that in my closet as a little kid. And so I'm really proud of that. I think that sort of accomplished the task for me. The goal at the end of the day for me became like, don't 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 lose to this again. Became like very personal of like, man, I just relived that moment so many times of getting dressed in clothing that was totally inappropriate for me, that I didn't want to like somehow make something that was like totally inappropriate for me to wear. And Tan and Gigi definitely saw me struggle. That was like, it's like, oh, like I didn't get to design from a place of joy and playfulness and fun anymore, which is like what I do now. I had to go and design from a place of like extreme uncomfortableness, extreme distress, I would say, and try to make something that is joyous. So instead of going from like zero to fun, right, I had to go from like very negative to very positive. So I would say like a bigger leap to take than most for that one. And while I don't think it was like my strongest look, I think I still got the job done, And so those shorts I actually really like.
Yeah,
And there were
I
some
like the
fun
neat.
details on it too. And
Yes.
exactly, once it came to life a little, the way I design is like I sort of there's maybe an idea, but just start building and see what happens. And once I got on the right beat, like on the right path, then it sort of opened itself up to me. And I was like, okay, I know what this is. I got it. I like this. I would wear this. And as soon as that was locked in, I was like, yes, we're good. Just keep going.
Yeah, just the detail of that neon thread, I really liked
It's
actually.
cool, right?
Yes.
Fun. It's weird.
And was this your first collaboration? We see you collaborate with Joy on that. Kind of, the theme that you picked was kind of a New Year's Eve party with, grabbing the pizza. But
That's
was
right.
that your
That's right.
first collaboration?
Right.
And what was
Definitely
the
not my
first
first collab.
one?
I would say the majority of my career prior to that had been working with others, either in a team setting or a partnership setting. That's how, commercial fashion works, is you're always working with people. You're working with tech designers, you're working with your head designer, you're working with your creative director, you're working with your product development team, your production team, your marketing team. So you're working together all the time. And so no, that wasn't an unusual spot for me to be in at all.
And in your new collection that just launched today on the grandma utility vest, you mentioned on that, that it was made by family, sewing design, and screen printed by the queer community. And I just wanted you maybe talk a little bit about the importance of that, like that community being represented.
Yeah. So I make clothes for my community in mind, period. When I'm designing with bodies in mind, that like I just clothing that like I really needed. And so that vest is probably one of my favorite pieces I've made recently. It is made from upholstery fabric, so that fabric like belongs on a couch. But I think it's really, really cool. So anyway, anywho, the design, the graphic on the design is by me. The screen printing factory I use here in Los Angeles is queer owned, by two gals who are absolutely fantastic. The sewing was done by a sample maker here in Los Angeles. They are lovely, and I work with them quite a bit. They're really, really talented. So they also are part of the queer community. And so I try really hard. All my screen printing is done by a queer owned business. My sample maker is queer owned. I'm very, very specific in like keeping it for the community and in the community. If other people like it, that's fantastic. I'm so flattered, but it is designed sort of with my community in mind because that's who needed it. And so I think collaborating with my community too is like, it adds to the design. it adds to it for sure.
And Tan got very emotional when you left, so I guess that's one nice thing to see. I think he probably cried the most when you left. I guess we won't give away which episode in case people haven't watched it yet. But what was it like to kind of leave when you did? And I don't know, anything you would do differently? How do you sort of reflect on it now, a little time?
Yeah, that's a great question. Reflecting on it now, I think everything played out exactly the way it should have. I think the people who kept going for a reason, and it was, my time to go for a reason, and that's all good. So leaving that day, I will say as soon as I saw, different looks going down the runway, I had a feeling. I was like, ooh, I don't know if I nailed this one. And so that's a pretty good indicator. If I sort of, again, my litmus test, like, do I like it? Would I wear it? Things like that. If it doesn't pass that test, then sometimes it just wasn't meant to be. But it was sad, I do feel like now, after, some time has passed, that like, man, I did have quite a bit more to show people. But what's great is I can still do that. I don't need to do it. I will sometimes, I'll tell you this much. If I'm sort of in a creative rut, I will set a timer and just try to make something as quick as I can, even if it's utter and complete nonsense. And that is a very helpful tool that I sort of stole from the show that I use in my arsenal to this day. It works. I don't know.
Well, I think your last look was stunning. So
thank you so much.
Yeah, I really do. Beautiful. I've watched it a couple of times now. So I've just got one last question for you, and it's for your favorite piece of LGBTQ plus culture. So it could be a movie, TV series, book, could be some design or photography, or a person who identifies as LGBTQ plus. So just someone or something that's had a big impact on you and kind of resonated with you over the years, and why.
Okay, that is such a great question. I'm gonna preface this by saying I am super bad at pop culture.
Mm-hmm.
I know almost none of it, but I think this classifies a piece of LGBTQ sort of pop culture. I'm going to say Villanelle from Killing Eve is one of my favorite characters of all time. I did a portrait of her, actually, that I still have, that's hanging in my office. When that show came out, Killing Eve, I was just totally enamored with it. I loved that. The other person I think is super important, and I mentioned this earlier, is I'm going to say Megan Rapinoe. I think she just does so much strong work for the community, and she's got fantastic style, and I love her sort of attitude and the way she moves through the world. I think she's a really fantastic role model for just, I would say, queer strength. So she's great.
Well, James Ford, thanks so much. And yeah, congratulations on what we got to see in Next in Fashion. And we're looking forward to whatever comes next.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Thanks for your time.